There are few people in the firearms space who are more influential, more well known, and more controversial than Lucas Botkins, formerly of T.REX Arms. And it's weird to hear my own voice say that he's formerly of T.REX Arms, because as long as I've been interested in owning and training with firearms, he's been doing this since 2013. I he's That's he was T.REX Arms. People say Lucas Botkins, they meant T.REX Arms. People said T.REX Arms, they meant Lucas Botkin. It's the same thing. And that's the issue with YouTube and internet culture is the username, the company name, and the company face. They're all kind of the same. It all kind of blends together, and it's feeds you with the most delicious smoothie of controversy and hot takes and skinny jeans. If you like Lucas Botkin, that's one thing he was well known for, was the skinny jeans. And, to each their own. I didn't necessarily care about that. I just thought it was cool that he could shoot real fast and had a lot of in-depth knowledge. I'm like slipping. A lot of deep knowledge about firearms and what's working, what's not, and how to get faster, how to go faster, how to shoot. He worked on some Call of Duty stuff. He had one of the coolest ranges in all of GunTube, and he kicked the hornet's nest on a daily basis. He really did. He made a lot of enemies. In fact, he kind of, after some time, made it so that I really didn't want to affiliate or associate. I bought one holster from him, and the whole time he kind of was doing his thing. And other than that, I was just like, you know what? I don't need to personally associate or affiliate myself or support with my purchases, just because he's just so divisive, right? Right? And, you might be saying like, oh, who's this guy? Well, no, Lucas is a great guy. Or maybe you have no idea who Lucas is. Let's go back to the beginning. 2013, a young guy just kind of getting started in life, Lucas Botkin, started a holster company, kind of like one of those in his basement kind of situations. He said he started with like $2,000, something that you could save up over a summer. Some people have disputed that and said like, oh, no, to start this company that you did, you probably got daddy's money, because daddy's, his dad is, and his whole family is in like ministry and doing different stuff. And people have kind of accused him of being kind of like a trust fund kid in a certain kind of way. And we'll discuss that. Actually, I'm bringing on an expert towards the end of this episode to kind of discuss what it actually takes to start a holster company. But kind of beyond his introduction into the space, he started using the most powerful marketing tool in existence right now, and that's the internet. He started using YouTube specifically, which is extremely powerful. I think right now it's like YouTube and TikTok are like neck and neck for the amount of transactions and eyeballs. And I don't have those real numbers, so please don't quote me. But just based on what I'm seeing, if you want to do well and you want to sell some products, get on YouTube, get on TikTok, or one of these social media apps platforms, and you can do a good job, as is evidenced by people becoming big fans of what T.REX Arms was. It was a holster company, Kydex company, turned into a company selling plate carriers and a couple different items, and really pushing you to become more. Even on the transaction screen, I remember when I bought my first holster from them, it actually gave you a little bit of a discount if it said like, hey, and I can't quote it perfectly, but more or less like, will you stand up and defend life if you are in a position to do so? And if you said yes, you got a little bit of a discount. Or was that the actual price, and the other price that you could pay is the coward's fee? I don't know, just a thought. So let's kind of break down why I'm even talking about this. You probably already know from the title. So Lucas Botkin has come out recently and stated that his family more or less legally stole his business from him, and he was put into a position where he felt that he had to leave. Let's just put up the statement. If you're watching on YouTube or video feed, statement's going to be on screen. I'll go ahead and read it. On May 28th, 2025, I resigned as an employee and board member of my company, T.REX Arms. Per my shareholder agreement with my business partners, they will be buying out my equity. This decision was not made lightly, but was required in order to maintain my values and take care of my family. I will share more details in the coming months, but the future is exciting and new ventures are already underway. I'm not done yet, and that's highlighted in orange. Signed, Lucas Botkin. This is found on his Twitter or /X account if you wanted to go find this yourself. And right away, like, you look at this statement, it's just like, oh no, what? He was an employee? Like, I thought he was the owner. Kinda. We'll get into that. Is that what they bought out his equity? Okay, why would they do that? And then you go, the big thing, right? This is the part that's gonna, like, there's lit the internet on fire in the section where the gun people exist. And I didn't make this decision lightly, but in order to maintain my values and take care of my family. What values? Family? Did someone get SA'd? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm reading this, I'm just like, what the heck? But he's going to share more in the coming months, and he indeed he did share more. He sat down and did nearly a 30-minute video discussing it, but not before T.REX Arms, the remaining entity of T.REX Arms, his older brother, I believe David, basically recorded a quick video, like 2 or 3 minutes, it seemed like, just explaining, like, hey, something happened. We don't love how we handled it. They took some ownership, said somebody sent an inappropriate something to somebody close to Lucas. They didn't mention it was his wife, but that was assumed by many. And later, Lucas clarified in his statement, somebody sent something to his wife and we didn't handle it the right way. We regret that. And okay, so he's taking some ownership. Okay, cool. And there has been a little bit of rift between Lucas and the rest of ownership for a while. That's interesting. And at this point, he's left the company and we're, full speed ahead, right? And that's I'm sure where T.REX Arms, his brothers, would have loved things to stay, but not even a week later, Lucas dropped a video, I believe it was on a Sunday afternoon, in his gym or where, it looked like some sort of home gym or something. It was kind of nice. And he laid it all out there, basically, the entire timeline, the internal conflicts growing, the harassment that he's claiming that his wife received from an employee. And the big thing there, and I'll just tackle that. He claims that graphic images were sent to his wife, and the images were sent from a son of an executive. Now, who exactly is that? I don't actually know, but I'm sure if you really wanted to find out, you could. These things aren't hard to find out. It's the internet. It's not hard. And after that occurred, the individual was not fired. He, went to go address it. The offender was not fired. The offender was eventually fired after Lucas publicly announced it, no, it was after he left the company. Then this person was fired. But kind of too little too late. And I'm sure they all regret that because that's unacceptable in many ways. So that's a piece of it. But Lucas, as Lucas's brother David explained, there was a little bit of a rift between us and him, right? Well, a little bit more than a little bit of a rift. Lucas goes into explaining that in 2016, just 3 years after, and as things started to heat up for his company, one of his brothers, 10 years his senior, came to him and said, like, hey man, we want to help you with the business. We want to And this part was explained later in some other subsequent interviews. We want to help shield you from liability. We want to take some of this pressure off of you, and we'll run the company with you. Basically, as owners, not as your employees, but as owners, we want equity. Lucas claims that they did not bring the kind of equity. It's assumed that they brought no equity, but I'm sure something was brought, something. But according to him, the equity that they received, which ended up being, and this is the key, over 51% of the company between him and between the other owners collectively versus his ownership position, they more or less now run the company as a collective. And first it was, David and the older brother. Then it was the one who was 10 years older than him, the one he looked up to. And then eventually one of their, I believe the future brother-in-law joined the group. And if I'm mistaken, please forgive me, but just based on some of the notes I took, that's what I heard. And it's interesting because we're going from, okay, so you signed 2 contracts at this point, basically changing the ownership pool. You've given away more than 51% of your company. And I had a conversation with Brandy. She's a business owner and someone who understands these things more than I do. So I reached out to her. She's part of a few very successful businesses, including a firearms range, training company, and some other things, and a gun store in the state of California. But I reached out to her because I'm like, hey, like what am I missing with this? And she breaks it down, and we'll dive deeper into what she had to say a little bit later in this conversation between you and I as well. And it gets interesting because ultimately, just the long and short of what Lucas had to say is his fault. He gave up his company. He was naive. He did not understand fully, and he didn't pay for a good lawyer to look over his documents before literally giving away his company, which is crazy. Which is crazy to me that you have a really successful thing and you just give it away. I'm sure you feel the same. So, kind of moving past that, or to kind of the a future point in his more like 30-minute conversation, Lucas, he's explaining to the audience and myself, and hopefully if you go check it out, that there were things that kept coming up, decisions that needed to be made that he felt he couldn't have made, and things that he got vetoed on, and others have disputed those facts and said, like, no, if Lucas really wanted something, he could have it, and there's no real issue, no schism, no this, no that. But ultimately, this is the explanation that Lucas gave on to more or less why he had to pull away. There was one other thing, but one of the main reasons was he felt that he was not able to run his company the way he wanted to run it. Enter his wife, and we'll talk a little bit more about his wife and family dynamics with Dr. Max, she's a PhD counselor and therapist, and she generally deals with like personality stuff, and she can probably explain it a little bit better than me, but we had another conversation with her, just trying to understand it a little bit deeper. And we will get into her part of our conversation closer to the end. So stay tuned, please stay with me. So he explains that when his wife came into the picture, they started dating. First they were fine, and then they realized they didn't really like her. She's a little bit different than what they're accustomed to. If you know anything about the Botkin family, his sisters have a blog, and they're just very nice, very classy, very churchy kind, maybe a little bit religious, and I don't have a problem with religious people. I'm very religious myself. I'm proud of that fact. But from the outside looking in, it's like, ooh, this is a little weird. It's a little weird. And maybe that's a good thing. But it turns out in this case, it wasn't. Because, and I'm not talking about the sisters specifically, but because you kind of look at some of the archetypes of the people in his family, and then you see who his wife is, and his wife's not some out there crazy person, but she does have like purple hair, and she has a degree in engineering, and it sounds like she was speaking her mind. And Lucas was very clear to say, advocating on her behalf. Advocating on his behalf, she was. And this bothered the brothers, according to him. And it seems like they noticed that she noticed them, that she noticed, some of the pop culture, pop psychology terms like the gaslighting and all those things, which are really phenomenal. It's like these things really do happen. But I say that because I personally, I feel like these words are abused and just used all the time. And somebody doesn't like that maybe something's happening in a conversation. Oh, don't gaslight me. Okay, whatever. Like that. I feel like we just kind of overdo it, right? It's OD. But in this case, I think there may have been some of that, specifically because we look back and we say, like, dude, you like legally stole this company from your brother. And when Lucas cites this example, when he wanted to, or when she wanted to join the company and maybe even work for free, the application got sent to HR. He stepped back from the process, didn't want to be involved. Of course, let his wife earn it on her own, right? They didn't even look at her application, according to him. She was not called back. They didn't let her know anything. And it's kind of ridiculous that an engineer isn't able to get a job at her husband's holster company. I mean, they make a little bit more than holsters, but that's just strange to me. So he implies, and many people have implied, and YouTubers and YouTuber / competitive shooter and educator Ben Stoeger, who he's a funny guy. I'm actually really enjoying his coverage of this whole thing, and he's here for it. He loves the drama, and unfortunately, I think we all do. Most of us, if you're here and you've watched this far, I'm going to assume that you're at least intrigued by it. And nothing's wrong with that. But of course, at the end of the day, we all have our own lives, and we shouldn't make this like a god to us. Like we're just sharing a story and gleaming the life lessons from it. So Ben Stoeger seems to think that Lucas's brothers hate his wife, which is a strong thing to say. As a Christian folks, I assume they would never say, they'd probably say, no, we don't hate anyone. That's a real churchy thing to say, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But we go into this kind of next part where it's like, okay, well, when somebody harasses the owner's wife, how do they have a job? How are they still employed for more than the amount of time that it takes to say that you're fired? Like that, I don't understand that. So if you told me that Lucas's brothers had a big problem with his wife, I'd understand. And I wasn't there for every single conversation. Sometimes people say and do things that they don't even mean it. They don't even know what they're saying. And it comes out funny and, just rubs people the wrong way, and they don't want to be involved. That's fair enough. But there was one incident that Lucas notes, and that's when he was about to get married. His brothers came to him and said, like, hey, listen, this is something that we've been talking about. You should probably get a prenup, because if something happens to you guys, God forbid, we don't want to kind of be stuck with her having half of your company shares, and then she's part of our ownership group, and now we're having to run the company with somebody that we never really agreed to run a company with. And he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense." And maybe he was probably a little bit hurt, just based on the way he said it. But on the other side, when his wife was like, "Okay, fair," do they have post-nups? Did they take into account that if something bad were to happen and their wives were to, for some reason, leave or split from them, and they were to be able to attain any reasonable amount of ownership of T.REX Arms, would they be able to, or is there protections from that? And when Lucas countered with that, they didn't like that. And I think eventually they did get that done, and he got that done as well. But that's an interesting topic, because I know personally I don't love prenups, but I understand. And I think just the family dynamics there hurt my heart as someone who's, part of a family, and you don't want to see families struggling and falling apart because people don't want to get along. Like that hurts personally, So let's go ahead and talk to Dan. He's the owner of North Coast Tactical. He does a lot for us on this channel, but I think he is actually a really good source of information on what it takes to get into the holster game, because he and Lucas kind of got started around the same time. And although their paths kind of did different things, he's got interesting insights on kind of what it actually costs. And, do you have to be a trust fund kid to be a holster maker, or could you get started with 2 pennies that you can rub together? All right, let's go ahead and talk to Dan. So let's talk about how much it actually cost to start a holster business. Well, first, the big claim was like, "Hey, no, my dad didn't give me all the money to start this business."
Yeah, like almost like a trust fund kid.
Yeah, he's not. He's claiming that his success didn't come from his daddy's money.
Yeah, he's a self-starter.
$2,000, something you could earn over a summer as, kid working his way through high school, and invested that into, I guess, machines and what it took to kind of get started. As a guy who's started this business at some point and has expenses, and obviously things change, expenses go up, machines change, costs and tariffs and all that, right? What does it actually cost to get started? Bare bones minimum.
So for me, I actually started with far less than what he said. I remember I was working a full-time job. I'd work an 8 to 10 hour shift, and I'd come home. I'd go into the garage, and I'd fire up the toaster oven. That's all we used to use back in the day. We didn't have fancy heat presses and stuff like that like we do now. I heated all my kydex in a toaster oven, and I pressed holsters on 2 pieces of foam. I worked a full-time job. I'd go in the shop after work, and I'd make holsters for local people, whether it was friends, whether it was students that I was teaching CCW classes at the time. And I did that for years just in the local market. And when I finally got to the point where I was even able to afford any of like the fancy machines and things like that, I had actually quit my job. I was working at a car dealership, and I think that I was there for a little while, and I got enough money out of my 401k from leaving that job after taxes and all of that. I think I had like $1,000 or like maybe like $1,200 from that. Yeah, from the 401k after all the taxes came out. Harbor Freight, some cheap stuff to get you started, and I did that for years, and for only like let's call it $1,000. I was able to make a high quality product, much higher product than before, because now I'm using a vacuum former. I wouldn't say you can start a high quality manufacturing company a holster manufacturing company for that now, you'd have to spend a little bit more just because everything's so much more expensive from the last decade or so. But back then, yeah, I started with even less money than what Lucas said.
All right. So clearly, if you wanted to start a holster company with $2,000 and a bag of chips and a pocket full of dreams, you could. In fact, you could get started with a toaster oven and some Kydex. So apparently, it's not that serious, and you can get started. Although, if you want to get good, you may want to get that $2,000 in order to really kind of invest into machines that'll make your life easier and make the product better. Um, so at this point, I want to talk to Brandy, who is the business expert per se on this conversation, and she's going to kind of break down some of this stuff. Let's go ahead and hear from Brandy as she shares her thoughts on some of these things, specifically like contracts.
Yeah, that was real predatory. I mean, when you're talking about going into business, you got to understand that nobody is your friend, not even the person that you're laying in bed with. It's just like when you go through a divorce, you never divorce the person that you marry. So you're not going to terminate a contract with the person that you went into the contract with either. So before you go into contract, you need to make sure you protect your best interest and make sure that you always keep controlling interest over your business. That controlling interest is huge. For a lot of people that don't understand what 51% means, 51% means that you have the final decision. If you are at 50-50, that means that the people who hold the other 50, it is a coin toss. If you are at 49 and they got 51, and if that 51 gets together, that means you lose. It doesn't matter who you are, what you invested, or how you started it. And there is such a lack of education in the business world with people hopping into business and having these amazing ideas. Like you see it on situations like Shark Tank and stuff like that, people come into the business world and they have these amazing ideas that start traction. And then you get all these people that leech onto them with all these great ideas, sell them dreams, and hey, I got your best interest at heart. Let's sign here. We're going to be great. And unfortunately, for people who don't have any education in business, or people who will not take their money and hire an attorney, that's where they end up, just like him.
All right. So definitely appreciate Brandy sharing that on the contract side and just the overall business savvy that you got to have if you're gonna get into this thing. You got to be willing to do certain things, such as if you're gonna go into business with people, you should probably go ahead and get a contract looked over by somebody who understands contracts, and you're not going to get just completely hosed, right? Like that's not fair and or fun, and you may have big regrets because you didn't spend a couple bucks. So many good systems like LegalZoom and stuff like so many good things out there for young aspiring creators and professionals. Why not use them? Okay, so let's go ahead and bring on Dr. Castilda Maxwell, aka Dr. Max, because I think she's got a lot of really good things to say on the issue, specifically around like the narcissistic traits and family enmeshment, and of course the wild card of his wife just popping out of nowhere and showing up. Let's go ahead and hear from her now. So he came out and shared that his wife pretty much like opened his eyes to everything.
Yes, that happens. No, that happens often in relationships. Remember, he's in a very enmeshed family. But he also said, I don't know if people caught that, she's had her experiences. So she came in, so she probably has a history of her stuff that she had to work through, which is why it was so easy for her to be like, bruh, this is what they doing to you. Him being one of the younger brothers, right? And so being in such a, let's say, tight-knit family that, Christian, that was used very heavily. I get where he's coming from. And at the same time, where in the field of psychology, sometimes we talk about how people will spiritualize stuff as a negative coping skill because you're really not facing what's going on. You're spiritualizing it. In that, like, he's walking and so trusting because he even gave the age, right?
Yeah, it was like a 10-year age gap.
Right. So my big brother wants to help me run my company. right? There was probably some admiration there and all that stuff, right? So there's a lot of accountability. If we really want to look at that dynamic of his family, there's a lot of accountability on his older brother. Like I said, the older brother, I don't know what his motive was. But even how he tells the story of how he came in, like you said, if I'm going to do him a solid, I'm going to be like, man, you running this company and I just want to get in and help you, make sure you good, make sure nobody take advantage of you. Because that's what you would think a big brother would do.
Right.
I don't know these people. They have not sat on my couch. I haven't had conversations. I haven't interviewed them. I didn't do a psychological assessment on them. But what I do know is when a person is playing games and they know somebody see them playing these games, they try to cut them off.
Right.
They try to block them, right? And so, or people will, it's just like abusive relationship. What's the first thing the man does? Or even the woman?
Oftentimes, in what I've seen, they'll try to isolate them from their family.
Exactly. So, especially, and if you always know, the one that sees them, the one that like, I don't like him. Right. Everybody else, he can't smooth over. He can't charm this one, right? And I don't like them. So then that's the one they target. I don't like that cousin. That cousin, that cousin ain't good for you. That cousin's bad news, a bad influence. See how she jealous of you. Right? So they start planting seeds. But here's the protecting factor for him, where he's like, well, this is my wife. His Christian values. I done made a commitment to God and my wife. So my responsibility is to protect my wife and to be one with her. And that's what he did, right? So he looked, he observed, he noticed based on what she was pointing out. And you can see that. And so going back to what we were talking about, where like she came in and started pointing this stuff out, well, then they tried to cut her out. Because why? She noticed them. She noticed the games that they were playing.
Okay. And if you enjoyed what Dr. Max had to say, or you're curious about her other thoughts on the issue, we actually had a really long conversation. It was like 30, 40 minutes. And I can't include the whole thing here, clearly. But if you're a member on YouTube, it's like $5 a month to become a member on the Gun Club Radio YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch that, the full conversation. Or if you go head over to our merch page, Fourth Wall, and you click into that, it should be in the show notes and whatnot. And you'll be able to, if you are a member there, it's like $5 or something like that. You'll be able to watch the full thing there. And that's a cool way to support. If you are interested in checking out the full thing, let me know. So kind of moving on to the online reaction and kind of like things that we should take from this, specifically like the online reaction, right? Instantly, all the big YouTuber names, GunTuber names, and even like some of the biggest names like Colion Noir, Warrior Poet Society, Grantham, you either got them doing podcasts about it and or commenting directly on Lucas's video discussing it, right? So specifically, I saw Grantham saying like, hey man, you've always been a decent friend to me, appreciate you. And I'm sorry this is happening, more or less. I'm paraphrasing, right? And then we had on the other side of that, John Lovell, who Ben Stoeger pretty much attacked. It was like, well, who cares? You're carrying water for the brothers. Lame. John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society, they did a podcast on this issue, and he basically, he doesn't really like how Lucas is handling this, and he feels like Lucas is dragging and being unchristian almost by, no, I'm paraphrasing and maybe putting a few words into his mouth, admittedly, but more or less, he doesn't like how Lucas is handling the situation. It's Lucas's prerogative, right? That said, going into Colion Noir, who he refused to say really much of anything for a good long conversation. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was fascinating hearing him kind of dance a little bit and say, like, well, straight up, actually, I don't like Lucas. Lucas has never been good to me. Lucas was rude to me about this and that, and he dogpiled me on this and that. And I think it kind of shows the a vulnerable side of Colion Noir, if you will, where he kind of admits that people hurt his feelings when it came to him in his time at the NRA and some of the ways that he was attacked for NRA things. And we all know the NRA struggled for a long time. And recently this show actually got a chance to go over there and have conversations with people in NRA leadership. And I think they're making improvements. They are making improvements, but we still need to see additional fruit in order to correct the years and years and years of issues that we've seen from the NRA over time, right? So keep an eye out for that, and I guess see if you are seeing what you would like to see from that organization. If not, make your voice known, because there's people who are listening. So speak, right? But that's a tangent. That's a tangent. So Colion Noir, he more or less said, I don't like Lucas. Lucas doesn't really like me. And I'm not going to speak on it, but I think it's kind of an unfortunate situation. Okay, cool. Didn't say much. Lucas went on to do a couple live streams, couple conversations, and more or less everyone and their mama is like, I'm never buying T.REX Arms again. I can't believe they did this. How are you guys going to kick out the guy who started it all? Lucas is like the heart and soul of your organization. And I think most of that's true. Obviously, at the end of the day, personally, based on things that I've seen, T.REX Arms is going to be fine. They're going to take a bit of a hit, but I don't think they're going to go out of business completely, because a lot of people who are kind of more normie, like, I bought a gun, I need a holster, and I'm seeing these holsters pop up on Google. I bought a gun, I saw an old T.REX Arms video, I'm going to go buy the holster. Those videos belong to T.REX Arms. They're not Lucas's videos. They're going to stay up forever. They're going to continue to print money. They're going to continue to print money for T.REX Arms. The question for me is, will the YouTube channel continue to thrive, or will it eventually kind of drop off in views, like with the Daily Wire Brett Cooper situation, if you're familiar with that, where the star of the channel left? It wasn't her channel. She was kind of put in a position where she could leave, and she did, and she couldn't take the channel with her. It's owned by the Daily Wire, and that channel has fallen off a cliff. It's been bad. So will the channel survive? I bet no. Not if YouTube culture is what I think it is. So what should you take from this? And really, I think you're an adult. I think you can think for yourself. But if I had to suggest some things to consider, I think the biggest thing is to protect your family if and when you can, pretty much at all cost. Kudos to Lucas. As much as him and I don't love everything he's ever done. I didn't love how he came after Print Shoot Repeat, who admittedly can be a little bit childish in the way he presents content, but like, who cares? Like, he came for him pretty hard one time, and had a lot to say about, goofy YouTuber types, but that I can put to the side for a moment and say, hey, as much as you are attacking people that I like, people who I consider like colleagues and like friendly in the space, protecting your wife from your bully family is respectable. I hope what you're presenting is real, that there's nothing that's made up or nothing that's exaggerated. You know what I mean? So I think another big thing is to when you're dealing with relationships and family and whatnot, like you should look out for some of these like weird behaviors from narcissistic family members, like gaslighting, isolating you, not encouraging you to take the extra steps to protect yourself because they're going to gain extra from it. Like if people are trying to rush you through a contract, that's a bad sign. Walk away. I'm not saying that that's what happened in their situation, because they might have said like, hey, get a lawyer to look at it. And he was like, no, I believe you. I'm good. I trust you. Of course, they should have insisted and be like, dude, I don't think you don't know what you're doing. Get a lawyer. We'll pay for the lawyer. But I don't know. But really, kind of like I'd mentioned before, whether you like Lucas or you don't, like this is a masterclass in what not to do. And of course, there are some important lessons on how to rebound, how to build a new brand, how to paint the narrative in the way that you'd like it painted. And of course, I'm curious to see where we go from here. All right, guys, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Type T.REX, T-REX in the comments if you've made it to the end. And of course, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for this entire time. All right. If you're new here, because I'm sure there'll be a few new people here, please subscribe. And we don't normally handle like industry gossip. Normally we handle like different topics like, hey, is the RXM good? Like I have one right behind me, Ruger RXM. Is it good? Or, hey, let's talk to this guy about this thing that he's building. But yeah, if you made it this far, type T.REX in the comments. And of course, thank you for tuning in to Gun Club Radio.